Hello, and thank you for watching this recording on resumes and job searching for international students. My name is Emily Fair, and I am a senior career counselor within the Career Center of Links Connect. To get started, we're going to be focusing on building a strong resume. I'll talk about resumes for the first half of this presentation, and then we'll move into some job search strategies, and I'll go over a brief outline of the job search process for international students. So when it comes to building a strong resume for positions on campus or positions off campus, it's best to follow a standard American formatting. So you don't want your resume to be any longer than 2 pages in length. If you are still early in your career and haven't had a lot of jobs or experiences yet, or still an undergrad, we recommend keeping your resume to 1 page. Typically, employers will focus most on that first page anyway. The only reason you would ever go on to 2 pages is if you have a lot of very relevant experience that you want to showcase. Typically, resumes go on to 2 pages in length once people have been a student for many years and have their PhD, or have been working for many years and have risen up to a manager or director level and have lots of relevant experience that they want to showcase. We also recommend using a simple font. I've listed a few examples here, although your header can be a different font if you would like. You want your name to stand out because if employers are scrolling through 25 documents or 100 documents to look at resumes, they want to easily be able to spot yours. So your name can be larger than the rest of the text on the resume. We also recommend spelling out all acronyms. So even writing out the University of Colorado Denver instead of CU Denver. You never know who will be looking at your resume. They may have recently moved to Colorado and may not be familiar with some of the organizations or universities in our state, especially if you're coming from outside of the United States and we're part of an organization that we may not be familiar with. So always spell out all acronyms. Also, we recommend avoiding templates. I know there's a lot of them out there, like in Canva. Google Docs has some templates, so does Microsoft Word, but they can be very difficult to edit. And we do recommend making edits to your resume for every position you apply for. So it can get very frustrating to make those edits within a template, as well as a lot of resumes are filtered through applicant tracking systems. And this is software that looks to see how closely resumes match job descriptions. And sometimes applicant tracking software can't read templates. So it's best to avoid them. We also recommend submitting your resume as a Word document. Oftentimes PDFs can be read, but if you're running into an applicant tracking system, not all of them can read PDFs, and your resume may show up blank. So I would recommend building your resume in a Word document or Google Doc and submitting it as a Word document. We recommend using between 0.5 to 1 inch margins. If you're having difficulty fitting all of your material on 1 page, this is an easy way to get a bit more room. Just shrink the margins on the sides of the page and the tops and bottom of the pages to fit more content. But don't go any smaller than 0.5 or it can fill up the page a bit too much. There's also no correct formatting for a resume. Everyone's resume looks a little bit different, but do be consistent with how much space you put between each section. If you capitalize the headers, then make sure all headers are capitalized, not just 1 or 2. So make sure everything is aligned very clearly and the formatting is consistent. If you are an international student, we recommend including that you are authorized to work in the United States on your resume. This should be common sense if you're applying for an on-campus position at CU Denver and you're a CU Denver international student. But unfortunately, we do have some employers on and off campus that may not be familiar with the policy for hiring an international student and may assume that they can't hire you if they see an international sounding name on your resume. So I would include in the summary, maybe even your contact information, that you are authorized to work in the United States. You also don't need to include references on your resume. When you apply for a position that wants references, they'll ask for those references as part of the job application online, and they don't expect you to list those references on your resume. It can be difficult to fit all of your content on one page of a resume as it is. So give yourself as much space as possible, and I would remove those references. Here are some common resume sections that you'll see across countries across the world, so this will be pretty familiar. One is your contact information. Definitely include your name. Again, we want that to be the largest thing on your resume. Also, a phone number and email that they could reach you at. Some companies prefer to call you to offer you an interview, and some prefer to email, so do give them an option. Also include the city and state where you're located. You don't need to put your full address. There's more and more hacking that's going on online, so you can leave off confidential information like your full address. Also, do not include any personal information. I know in some countries it's common practice to include a picture, but that's highly discouraged in the United States. Pictures put human resources in danger sometimes. For instance, if you didn't land an interview, you could potentially come back and say, you didn't give me this interview because of the way that I looked. So it creates bias in the hiring process, and it can put human resources in danger. So they highly discourage putting pictures on resume. You don't want any other personal information, so don't include date of birth, don't include sexual identity, anything like that. Obviously not a social security number. So this is all that you need for your contact information. You also want to include education. You are all current students or about to be a current student at CU Denver, so definitely showcase that. List the degree that you're currently pursuing first, if that is a master's degree or a bachelor's degree. And you don't need to include high school. Typically after your first year or second year of college, high school gets dropped off your resume because you've been gaining other experiences that are more relevant, like clubs that you've joined, projects that you've done in class, volunteering that you've done, and those are more relevant than high school experiences. So high school can be dropped off of your resume. That will give you more space as well. And then list the degree that you're pursuing, or the university, the full university, University of Colorado, Denver, write out that full name, city, state, and then list the month and year that you're anticipated to graduate. Employers will know that you're a current student if they see a month and year in the future listed on your resume. You can also include honors. If you've been part of a dean's list, if you have a high GPA, feel free to showcase that. I would recommend that you calculate your GPA out of what it would be out of 4.0. I know some other countries use other scales, and if employers see something like 8.7 out of 10, that's a source of confusion because that's not a system that we have in the United States. And it may make them hesitate or be confused and distract them from reading the rest of the resume. So I would calculate whatever percentage your GPA is from the country where you've had other schooling to a 4.0 scale and put that on your resume. You can also include relevant courses if you would like. This is most common when applying for internships. But if you have other experiences, like you've had other jobs, you've done volunteering, you've been a leader of organizations or programs, those showcase your skills a lot more than relevant courses because everyone else has taken the same courses as you when they're applying for a job with the same degree. So think about what you most want to showcase on your resume and decide if you need to add relevant courses or if you have other things you would rather add first. And then experience. This will be on every resume in some kind of format. Remember that unpaid experiences still count. So even if you've never had a paid job before, if you've had an unpaid internship or volunteered, maybe you were the leader of a project in your class, those all count and should be included on your resume, even if you weren't paid for it. And for each experience you include, paid or unpaid, do include your position title, what organization this was at, the city, state, what the dates of how long this experience occurred, and some bullet points that illustrate the skills you used in this experience. We'll be talking a lot about bullet points more later. And then there are a couple optional resume sections. You may or may not use these sections depending on what experiences you've had. So for example, we see a long list here. You don't need to put volunteer experience if you've never volunteered. And you don't need to put research experience if you've never done research before. But if you have done some of these things, feel free to use these headers or even mix and match the headers to really showcase your experiences. If you are in a field like engineering, tech, software, data, I would recommend having a section on your resume for academic projects, or you could call it engineering projects or software projects. That's something that employers really look for in those fields. So I'd probably list around 3 projects that you most want to showcase and add bullet points that highlight the skills that you used in those projects. If you're also in those same fields, again, like software, technology, engineering, even other fields that would require technical skills like design or marketing, I would have a section for technical skills on your resume where you can list out coding languages that you've used, machinery that you've worked with, maybe like Adobe InDesign or Photoshop, Microsoft Word, things like that. If you're applying for a job that requires those technical skills, that's a section I'd highly recommend. You don't necessarily need to have skills that are people skills, like organization, collaboration, teamwork. Those kind of skills work better within bullet points instead of just being listed in a skills section. Because anyone can put that they're a good team player or they're really good at communication on their resume. But if you can say, I had to communicate with 4 different students of diverse identities twice per week in order to assist them with math tutoring, that goes so much farther than just listing communication. So I would focus more on technical skills if you choose to have a skills section and not necessarily list those people skills. Again, I won't go through all of the ones on this list, but think about what experiences you've had and what you want to showcase on your resume. Bullet points can be the most time-consuming part of writing a resume. For every experience that you have, I recommend listing no more than 6 bullet points. Once you go past 6, it becomes a wall of text that can be difficult to read. And resumes are scanned, not read. Typically, they're only looked at for an average of 8 seconds. Of course, that depends on the job and how many applications there are. For on-campus jobs, you're probably getting closer to 30 seconds of screen time on your resume, but it's not a lot. So that's where we want to just focus on somewhere between 3 to 5 or 3 to 6 bullet points that someone can easily scan and see what you've done in these experiences. A little grammatical thing, do be sure to use correct tenses for present and past experiences. So if it's something that happened in the past, your verb should be in the past tense, like organized, arranged, maintained. Whereas if it's a current position, those verbs will be in the present. Maintain, organized, etc. Quantify your accomplishments whenever you can. Whenever you can sprinkle in a number into your bullet points, it really showcases how much work you did in those roles. So if you were part of a fundraising team, include how much dollars you raised. If you worked with a group of teammates, include how many teammates you worked with. If you were doing a scientific experiment that led to a 17% increase in productivity, include that. Number of trials that you've done as part of a scientific experiment. Any way you can add numbers and quantify will really strengthen your bullet points. You can also use the job description as a cheat sheet for what action verbs and keywords to include in those bullet points. And I'll show you an example of that in just a moment. I also want to highlight the bullet point formula here at the bottom. To write a strong bullet point, you want to start with an action verb. So that could be organized, maintained, collaborated, something like that. Then talk about the task and skill, what you did. And then the result or the purpose. So why did you do this task? What was the purpose of it? So here I have an example job posting. I found this on Handshake just a few months ago. International students were eligible for this role. It's a student assistant at a front desk. And we see responsibilities and some of the minimum requirements they're looking for. When you're applying to a position like this, you want to look closely at the job description for keywords and make sure those are in your resume. So go ahead and pause for a moment here and think about what are some words that you would want to include in your resume if you were applying to this job. Go ahead and pause and give yourself a moment to do that. All right, and once you've taken some time to look over these keywords, I'll show you some that jumped out at me. So I have here highlighted in green some verbs that would be great to start bullet points with. Verbs like answering, managing, instructing, maintaining. Those are really strong words to start a bullet point with if you're applying for this job. Some other keywords that you might want to include, I've highlighted in yellow. These are some more of those technical skills, not very technical, but email, front desk supplies, data entry, Microsoft Office. So definitely include that you've worked with Microsoft Office if you're applying for this job. We also see words in blue, things like ability to learn quickly, professionalism, customer service. So try to get as many of these words as you can into your resume. And that way you're more likely to land an interview. I know that's more work to take the time to look at the job description and switch up your resume every time, but it really does increase your chances of getting that job and getting the interview. And you don't have to change your resume completely. I'm not asking you to build a new one from scratch every time, but just change up those keywords in the bullet points or in the summary. I have some example bullet points here. So this would be an okay one, create posters to advertise club. We have a strong verb, create, and the task. I don't have a lot of details and I don't know why you did this. This is a bit better. We have a stronger verb, design, the task, flyers and posters to advertise photography club geared towards incoming high school students. I get a lot more detail, I can get a better understanding of what you did. But this is an excellent bullet point. We have really strong verbs, design, market, and advertise. And then the task, design, market, and advertise the photography club, utilizing Adobe InDesign and Photoshop, resulting in tripled attendance at our annual informational meeting. We've got that number in there, tripled. And as I'm reading this, I see technical skills through Adobe InDesign and Photoshop. And I would think, wow, if they tripled attendance for this, maybe they could do the same thing for me if I hire them. Here's another set of examples. This is okay, responsible for laboratory practices, but without the detail, I can't tell if this was like a one-time thing where you were helping with laboratory practices, or maybe this was like a month-long project. I don't know what you were responsible for. This is a bit better. Met with 4 research assistants to design an experimental process. I was like, okay, so there's probably collaboration skills, communication skills in that if you were working with 4 research assistants. But this is a great bullet point. Collaborated with 4 research assistants to design and execute experimental processes aimed at evaluating the evolutionary properties of bacteria. If I saw this bullet point, especially if I was looking to hire someone for a research assistant or a lab assistant, I would definitely bring them in for an interview. If you want to see our resume guide, we have 3 example resumes located in that guide geared towards US standards. You log into Handshake, you can see the URL here, ucdenver.joinhandshake.com, and then click Career Center, Resources, and then Resume Booklet and Curriculum Vitae. And that's a guide to write resumes. We also have a guide on how to write cover letters right beneath that. If you do have to submit a cover letter to a position, and aren't exactly sure how to write one and want to see some examples. All right, at this point, I'm going to transition to sharing some job search strategies if you're looking for an on-campus job. So I'm actually going to leave my presentation and pull up Handshake. This is a great website, not only for those resources on how to write a resume and cover letter, but how to find a job on campus. So if you click Jobs in this top right corner, we have quite a few filters here. All right, and the one we want to click is on campus. And once we've clicked on campus, we see there's 45 jobs currently available. Those 45 jobs, that number will fluctuate throughout the year. We typically see most on-campus jobs available around July, before the school year starts, because employers are looking to bring in new hires to start in the fall semester. You may also see more jobs be posted around January as employers are looking to hire more students to start in the spring semester. So once we have 45 jobs, you can scroll through all 45 of these, or you could type a term into the search bar to narrow down your results. So if you're looking just for an administrative front desk job, we could type in desk. And now we see there's 6 on-campus jobs that have the word desk either in the job title or somewhere in the job description. So that can be a way to narrow down the search. So going back to our 45 jobs, this is the first position we see listed. Notice that this says this position is located or based in the University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Campus. That campus is 30 minutes away from downtown Denver, located in Aurora, Colorado. So watch out for this location and make sure that it is on CU Denver's downtown campus. Technically, this position is remote, so this may be one that you are still interested in. Even though this medical campus is located 30 minutes away, it does count as on campus. So as international students, you are eligible to apply for roles at the Anschutz Medical Campus. As you look at the position, check the application deadline. Make sure that it's not, tomorrow or has passed. Consider the pay. Is this something that is financially reasonable for you? And then read the description. Is this a position that you would even be interested in? One that you would want to do? Here we see eligibility requirements, and these are those keywords that you want to put in your resume. So if you are applying for this role, definitely have the words Microsoft Office Suite in your resume. Outlook, Canva, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, any of these that you've used. It looks like communication skills are very big for them as well. So I would have a couple bullet points that start with the word communicated. If you scroll further down, you'll see there's a box beneath every position posted on Handshake that lists the employer's preferences. This box comes from employers being asked if they prefer a student with a certain GPA, a certain school year, or a certain major. And they could say, yeah, it might be nice to have students with this particular major, or it might be nice to have, seniors mostly apply to this position. But know that even if there's an X in this box because you don't meet their preferences, you can still apply for this role as long as you meet these requirements. So check the box and then check the job description to make sure that you meet all of their requirements. When you're ready to apply to a position, there is a blue apply button. So you can see that this position wants a resume and a cover letter. And every position will ask these 2 questions about work authorization. Are you legally authorized to work in the United States? For all of you, the answer is yes. You are a CU Denver student who is legally authorized to work on campus. So you'll respond yes for on-campus jobs. There's another question. Will you now or in the future require visa sponsorship? Technically, after you graduate, you'll have OPT, optimal practical training for a year. And then after that expires, you will need sponsorship, but you do not need sponsorship for on-campus jobs. So for this question, I would answer no for on-campus positions. If this was a full-time job and you have graduated, then I would probably respond yes. But for on-campus jobs currently, answer no, so that there's no confusion with the employer who wants to hire you. I'll also point out this button. If you click this, it will save the job under your Handshake profile. And you can go under your profile and click jobs or my jobs and see all of the ones that you've saved. Let's go ahead and take a look at another example job here. This is a student assistant 3. It is located on site at CU Denver, downtown Denver. The application deadline is very far in advance, which probably means that they just leave this position open year round and check resumes when they need to hire someone. We do see that it says work study eligible students only. Unfortunately, as international students, you are not eligible to do work study positions. Work study is a federal grant that is given to students who are citizens of the United States who apply for it and qualify. So unfortunately, you would not qualify as non-citizens and you would not be eligible for these roles. Around 50% of the on-campus jobs in Handshake do say work study. So definitely check this before you spend time tailoring your resume or writing a cover letter for a job that you may not be eligible for. If we scroll down, we'll see that box again. If you have an X, you can hover over it to see why it says X. This says that your employer prefers certain majors and you've not filled out your major in your profile. I'm not a student, so I don't have a major filled out. We can also hover over work study. They requested work study, and I do not have work study listed in my Handshake profile. So as an international student, again, could not apply to this one, but definitely check if there's any X's because you possibly could still apply if it's not a work study position. We'll bring up one more example here. This is a student digital content coordinator, also on site, also work study eligible students only. So we can move on to the next one. This is a CU Denver housing and dining desk assistant. It does not say work study only, so you could apply for this position. I also want to draw your attention to another website where you can find on-campus jobs that you are eligible for. All you need to do is Google search AHEC student jobs, AHEC, and it's the first result that comes up. AHEC stands for Auraria Higher Education Center. That is the campus that CU Denver is located on, as well as Metropolitan State University and the Community College of Denver. So all 3 of those institutions are on AHEC, and AHEC hires students from all 3 of those campuses to work at these locations. So for instance, if you got a job at the ID station, you could be working alongside students from Metro. And you are eligible for all of these jobs as international students. All right, so at this point, I'm going to bring back up my PowerPoint for the final portion of my presentation, focusing on the job process for international students. So for on-campus jobs, you can apply for them and get a job offer without needing to take any additional steps. Once you have accepted a job offer, then you'll need to go through the process of getting a Social Security number. To do that, you need to go to ISSS, the Office of International Student Scholar Services, and they'll give you an on-campus employment form that you'll give your employer to complete. That's basically proof that you have a job It'll have your pay, your start date, your job title, things like that. And then you'll also need to get a Social Security letter from ISSS and bring those two documents along with forms of ID and other things that I'm not quite aware of. So check with ISSS to the Social Security Administration to apply for that Social Security number. It typically takes a couple weeks to get the Social Security number. It comes as a little card, like a credit card. And while you're waiting for it, you can still work if you are an F1 and J1 student. You can get work and get paid while you're waiting for that card to come, because I know the American government does not move very fast. A few other things I want to mention. ISSS, International Student and Scholar Services, will be your favorite office. They have all detailed information about your visa process and employment on campus. So bookmark that website if you haven't already. As a reminder, as international students who are not eligible for work-study positions, on-campus jobs include the Auraria campus and the Anschutz Medical campus, which is 30 minutes away, but if you wanted to work there, you could. J1 students do have to receive written authorization from ISSS before they can start a position on campus. So you can still apply and get offered the job, but if you are J1, definitely connect with ISSS before your official start date. If you are an F1 or J1 student, you can work up to 20 hours of on-campus employment when school is in session and 40 hours per week on breaks instead of 20 hours. Breaks would be like Thanksgiving break, winter break, or spring break. And you are only eligible to work on campus when your F1 and J1 visa status is active. I have been asked about off-campus jobs before. This presentation was only about on-campus, but if you are interested in an off-campus job, you do need to be enrolled as a student for 2 semesters before you can work an on-campus job. And you also need CPT approval through ISSS, and that stands for Concurrent Practical Training. So you will need to meet both of those requirements before you can do an off-campus job. And that wraps up my presentation. Thank you all so much for being here today and listening. If you want to meet with myself or a career counselor within the Career Center, the best way to do that is through Handshake. You can click that Career Center button that I mentioned, and instead of going to resources, you can click appointments. You can also call our front desk at the number listed there or email me as well. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope you do well.